Welcome to a very special edition of the Small Church Great Commission podcast. Today we are broadcasting not live, but I really wanted to be able to say we were broadcasting live.
It feels live.
Right.
Semi-live. It's like those late night TV shows that are broadcast live at 11:30 p.m.
That's right. And we did have a live studio audience, which was kind of exciting for a while. They've all left. But we are at Mahaffey Camp. Woo. Take a look around.
Woo. Yeah.
Anyone who recognizes Mahaffey Camp, here we are. We are at the Mahaffey Camp. And we've got a very special guest with us today, Mr. Rich Noble.
That's me. That's Doctor.
Doctor, Pastor, Reverend
Mr. Dr. Richard Noble.
Instructor, local missions director at SCGC. I need a business card. I
I can give you one.
I just know that the job title is
See, you
Gertrude.
asked. You said you made the request, and I got to give it to you.
Okay. The Global Neighbor Ministries Coordinator, Rich Noble, at ACAC, Alliance Center, or Allegheny Center Alliance Church. So that's who we have with us today.
That's me.
Rich is a great friend of mine. I'm not necessarily a great friend of his, but
sure
he's a
you
great
are.
friend of mine. Rich was a professor of mine at Geneva College.
Hoorah!
Yeah, so that was 2008
That was a long time
to 2012. Yeah, it was a little while ago.
Yeah.
And
Did you pass my class?
I did.
All right.
I did. I actually, your class, because it was so engaging, riveting, and life-changing, I actually changed my major from psychology to communication after taking Rich Noble's class.
Woo!
So that was great. And then I continued to stalk Rich throughout his life into the Christian Missionary Alliance.
Kind of creepy.
And I continue to show up places that he is. And Matt and I, we've talked about the ACLD program. We followed Rich there. He's an instructor with the ACLD program. He also loves Mahaffey. And he loves...
It's all right. No,
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
It's worth pointing out that Mahaffey Camp has played host to literally everybody who's anybody in the Christian Missionary Alliance, from A.W. Tozer to Mr. Rich Noble.
Even A.B. Simpson was here. I think.
That's
think
what
so.
I always say.
The main tab behind us,
Yeah.
built in 1899. Untold, no telling how many international workers and missionaries have spoken in that building.
a lot.
Like we always say, Matt, Tozer to Noble, Mahaffey Camp has housed them all. So, from our historic giants to our modern giants. No, but we're excited to be here. So we're actually going to talk about kind of a wide variety of things today. We're going to talk about, because of Rich's, involvement and expertise in missions. He wrote a book that we read in our missions class. Mm-hmm. And Rich, is that book still available?
It most certainly is. Yes.
All right.
It's excellent if you have trouble getting to sleep at night.
Yeah. Can you tell
Well,
us?
I wrote it.
Can you tell us where we can find your book?
Yes, I have it in the trunk. No, just kidding. The name of the book is On Mission Together, Integrating Missions into the Local Church, and you can find it on Amazon, or you can go to fallcitypress.com or org. Been a while since I've been on the website.
Well, and if you do the ACLD program, it will be your reading in that class as well. So, and Rich, I know you did the New Testament class. You were an instructor in the missions class as well?
I
or
did
we just
one
read
of the
your...
sessions,
Okay.
one of the 6 sessions in the missions class.
Okay.
Yeah.
I knew we read your book. I was trying to remember.
Yeah, we read the book. We saw your lectures, which allowed me to recognize you at District Prayer Conference. That was my
And you still wanted to interview me.
Yeah.
It was my first time meeting Rich Noble. I went over to him, said, thank you. I enjoyed your book. I enjoyed your lectures. Don't hate me. I went to Grove City College, not Geneva.
Without a beat.
And without a beat, Rich responds, well, at least you didn't go to Westminster.
Yeah. Something we can all agree on, right? Yeah.
We're going to get many nasty letters from people who went to Westminster.
We love Westminster.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just leave it
We do it because we love them. A couple apologies. One, I apologize for every time that I knee this table and you get that shaking motion on the camera. That's the first thing I apologize for.
And if I do that, I'm going to blame Micah.
Right, yeah, it's always me. The
was Micah.
second thing I apologize for is that we've got a rather good shot of Rich's ear because we are actually in a very precarious position right now. I am actually falling off of a cliff. We went to great lengths at Small Church Great Commission podcast to get you the perfect shot of several cottages and the main tab, and and to do it, we're risking life and limb on uneven ground in dining room chairs, very generously donated by Fayette City Alliance Church, we should note, and the table.
And we are also risking the mockery of the youth group of Somerset Alliance Church, who is staying in the cottage next door to where we are filming.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly.
But they have not yet come back out onto the porch since we recorded.
Right.
They're still trying to find their rotten tomatoes.
So,
but look out! Look who's coming behind you, though.
Okay, there we go.
Ladies and
Mr.
gentlemen,
Scott
we have
Ream.
a surprise guest, Scott Ream.
We have our one of our featured speakers this week, Scott Ream. Scott, you can just
The
say
Reverend
hello,
Doctor.
you know.
Yes.
We managed to go ahead and set up camp, but we went to the boss. We got permission from your wife to be here, so
I was
all
thinking
right
there's
with it.
3 guys that nobody will let them in their cottage.
Well, that's also true.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah. So, well, without further ado, because we could easily have about a 3.5 hour long podcast, like Joe Rogan length podcast right now.
That's how long you told me we were going to do it.
Yeah, it's possible. I'm fully aware
To
that
be
with
fair,
us
at some point I do need to leave to help make the legendary Mahaffey milkshakes.
Right, yes.
Oh, wow.
Which he
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
with love, if anyone's wondering. He makes them
love.
with love. So, couple subjects we want to hit on. First thing I think we'll start with, actually. Let's start with the impact of, let's talk about camps.
Yeah.
Camps, summer camps, church camps like Mahaffey, and the impact of that on small churches. And just to kind of clarify the designation there, small churches aren't necessarily rural churches. A lot of ours are rural.
Sure.
But I think that church camps, at least growing up in a rural small church environment, church camps were always a big part of our ministry. And Mahaffey's kind of unique in that it is a generational camp. Like, a lot of people here, they have stories of their parents and their grandparents and their great grandparents and things like that. So I thought maybe we would talk a little bit about that, the impact that a good church camp ministry can have on your church's ministry. And I think one advantage, and maybe this is where we'll start off, is a lot of our small churches, you don't have all of the resources. We don't have all of the resources in the world to make this big, great, huge VBS that, you spend $10,000 on decorations and bring a helicopter in to drop, but we have the access to these awesome church camps that kids can go to and have incredible experiences, and everything from the kids that are there as campers all the way up to the teenagers you send there to be junior counselors. I think a lot of time that's overlooked. They are as impacted by serving as the kids who are serving there. But maybe just open discussion on that if you guys have thoughts on maybe the impact that camp has had on you.
It's we're in a day and age where you have a lot of people who are like, camp? When are we going to camp? I mean, why do I want to spend money and go to a place like Mahaffey? It's so rustic. It's so wah, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a reality.
Right.
But what people don't always realize is how, like you were saying, how impactful a camp experience can be, no matter what age you are. This is an opportunity. I mean, everybody jokes about it, and we have fun. Oh, I gotta go to family camp. I gotta go. But when you're here, you're setting aside. Even if you still joke around, you're not really meaning it. And the impact of a camp experience, wherever it is, whether it's Mahaffey or any of our Alliance camps or any camp. I mean, I grew up going to United Methodist camps. Impactful because you're away from everyday existence for a while, for a week at least, maybe 10 days. And it's a time, if you're open to it, to not just be away from the busyness of life. And kids don't understand what busyness of life means. They're just like, oh, it's a new place to play. But for adults and teenagers who are paying attention, it's an opportunity for God to take you out of your normal routine and get your attention, and maybe do some heart transformation work,
Right.
some mind transformation work. I know for me, I grew up going to teen camps at least a couple times over the years, and then got involved with camp ministry as an adult in various ways. And even when I have a formal position, where if like I'm a speaker or helping out, doing with whatever, these are times where the Lord speaks. These are times where, I get intentional about, I'm just going to go off by myself and relax, get some rest between the activities, and see what the Lord says. And it's been very helpful over the years.
Do you think camps are still relevant? Do you think that they're still engaging from what you've seen this week? What are your thoughts on that?
I think so, but I'm going to let you answer that further.
Oh,
Look at that.
It's well, family camp is it's an interesting thing, because normally when you think about camp, and the way I grew up thinking about camp, it was primarily targeted towards youth. So the idea of a true family camp where everybody gets together for a retreat,
Right.
and there are we have our age-appropriate activities for our kids. We have these tabernacle speakers for the adults. It's a really special and unique thing that camps like Mahaffey, like Beulah Beach do.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to go off of your point about the Lord being able to speak, because we do get out of our comfort zone when we're here at camp.
Right.
We've taken a lot of the distractions away. There's no Wi-Fi. Part of why we're not doing this live. There's no internet. There's no internet connectivity. You don't have your entire home space full of the things that you would normally be using to distract yourself.
Right.
And you're worshiping in a different environment. You're hearing a different worship team than you hear on Sunday morning. You're hearing from different speakers than your usual pastor, and so everything is shaken up, and you do have that opportunity to experience God in a fresh way. And it should be said that here at Mahaffey, family camp is the big show. It's like the U.S. Open that the USGA puts on, but there's a lot of other golf tournaments the USGA puts on. We have so many different camps for our kids and our youth here. I mean, a themed camp for kids who are into horses, one for science camp, just your general summer camps that you might think
we've had running camp for runners in years past.
Yeah. So you find new ways, and I believe they have either done or are thinking of even doing like a coding camp or some sort
STEM
of
camp. Yeah.
STEM camp.
Yeah, and that brings me to another point, guys. We do. We have all of these kids camps, adventure camps, soccer camps, and as Matt is mentioning. And this week we're at family camp, which is I want to say it's pretty unique among church camps nowadays. This kind of camp was born out of the camp meeting movement of a century ago, over a century ago, the camp meeting. So what used to happen here was this grove behind us would fill up with tents. It would fill up with tents, and people flocked from the area to come and listen to someone preach. And it was, it's hard work the way that they camped then. You want to talk rustic, I mean, they were rustic. There was a building, I'm told behind the dining hall here, where you used to go and take your bed sack over, and they would fill it up with straw mats. You'd make a straw mat to sleep on. Boy, wouldn't that be funny if I went. I'm not going to lean back. Like I said, I'm on the cliff here. But so the family camp atmosphere is different, because it's like...
Yeah, it is. For
me, it's like sometimes this is the only time of the year I see certain family. it's like our family reunion. It's people come from other states, they're away on ministry. There's even international workers here today who kind of come back and see people around their church. Sometimes they plan their furloughs to be here, and and they can't always do it every year, but sometimes they line up, and I've heard a couple people say, oh, it's my first time in 3 years, or it's my first time in 4 years being able to be here. I saw a cousin, it was his first time making it here from California, his first time making it here in 8 years, but he came back for family camp. And so it's really neat. It's a different dynamic, and I think about how rural churches and how rural ministry is. Those churches are often generational too.
Sure.
Matt has made a point before in other podcasts that a lot of small churches and or churches in rural areas or in small town areas will make their family the church. Whereas in other settings, the goal is to make the church your family. In a lot of cases, these small churches, most of the people in our churches are family, so that kind of corresponds with the camp atmosphere that we're at here. But yeah, that's a unique thing, I would say. I grew up going to some church camps, and it was for the kids.
Children camps, teen camps.
Right.
Yeah. Silly rabbit, camp is for kids.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about that. How many denominations outside of the Alliance, I know of at least one other denomination, has family camp? Usually church camp. I mean, the camps I grew up going to in the Methodist church, there weren't. You had church family retreats, but you didn't have a church. You didn't have a family camp.
10-day family
it'd
camp.
be a weekend.
I mean, it's a
full camp.
It's a unique thing, and the fact that it's hung around as long as it has, and is interesting. And I think one thing I would like to see with Mahaffey is I think I'm seeing a trend of we're starting to see new people come in. You used to see a lot of the same families, but kids are kind of coming in for the kids camp, and they're having a great time. And now I think they're starting to kind of bring more families in. So I think that's a good added bonus to all the other ministries and retreats that have been added here.
And I think for small churches especially, but not exclusively, but for all of the reasons we've been kind of putting out there, it becomes a very significant, it can be a very significant piece in the life of the local church, where you can share some, not everybody from your church is necessarily going to be a camp, but some people will be, and you're going to create some other memories. You're going to be able to do some, perhaps as a pastor at least, or it doesn't have to be a pastor, but you can do some discipling at camp outside of the context. For urban kids, for urban dwellers, it's a chance to get outside of the city. Right. It is a totally different atmosphere.
Yep. The air is different. Everything is different.
I mean, there are urban camps, and usually they're more like drive-in day camps. But being able to go outside and hit a rural area, or being whether it's up in the mountains or in a valley or somewhere, anywhere in between.
Time slows down a bit. In the mountains.
And you learn after a couple days, like, oh, I wonder what's going on in the world. Let me check myself. Oh, I don't have coverage. So it's not all bad.
Right. Yeah, and I think maybe just maybe a good parting thought on this particular subject would be use a camp. It doesn't have to be Mahaffey or an Alliance camp, but if you're working in a small church setting, a rural church setting, or even an urban church, but you got a small congregation and a small group of people, maybe you're meeting in a home and stuff, church camps are a great opportunity to send your people away for a period of time where they can draw closer to the Lord. And I don't think I've ever regretted going to a church camp. I've been to a lot of church camps, a lot of different camps throughout my life, and
you're so old too, so that's a lot of camps.
Well, and as a pastor's son, I also was a junior counselor at a lot of camps too, and that's honestly was as impactful for me as being a camper. Was having this cabin of young guys, to care for, and it was a responsibility thing, but it was also a ministry thing. Having that consecration night where the kids are thinking about the Lord and they're engaging in their faith for some of them the first time that their lives have slowed down enough, and the gospel is presented to them enough times and in a short amount of time that they're actually considering it and thinking about it. And me watching that as a 14, 15, 16-year-old, that was a big faith builder and spiritual formation.
So let me become the questioner for just a second.
Very good.
Looking at two guys that are younger than me, significantly
yes.
significantly young. So what role did camp play a role in you becoming a pastor?
For myself, no. I got the call to the pastorate after I was already out of college. So I got the call into ministry in mid to late 20s. So I don't think that church camp had that impact on me in that way. Micah's thinking a little harder, I can see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably going to have to say yes, because when I was about 13, in true Alliance fashion, they do altar calls for salvation, yes, but in the Alliance, we also do altar calls to be called on mission. Do you feel like God is calling you into vocational ministry? And when I was 13, I went up to the front and prayed about that and felt the Lord really speak to my heart that however my career was going to work out, I would be in ministry in some way, and I thought about that throughout college and different things. And then I was on my porch at Mahaffey as an adult a couple years ago, and it hit me in the heart again. I was just like, I need to get some ministry training. I really need to get some ministry training. And it was Rich Noble I sat down with on my porch, and I said, Rich, I think I'm going to go to seminary. I said, I'm trying to figure out, I think I might do this program. I'm not sure if I'm going to have the time. The money's going to be hard, but I really feel like I'm called to do this. And he says, well, what if I told you that there's a program, if you're going to be in the Alliance, he says, if you're going to be in the Alliance, that takes away the excuse of how much time you have on your hands, and takes away the excuse of a very affordable program, the ACLD program, and that ended up being my pathway to ministry for me in particular. And it's not necessarily for everybody, but both of those occasions, when I was a kid and as an adult, happened at camp. Probably because I sat down and I shut up and I listened for 10 minutes, and it's like camp is like that place where you at least get the opportunity to slow down enough to let the noise suppress a little bit.
And it's not that can't happen anywhere.
Right, exactly.
But there's something about going off-site.
It's built in here.
Being at a place, because most Christian camps, I hope all of them, are kind of built up around that purpose. This is why we're here, to help people, meet Jesus, encounter God in a way that they might not encounter. I was pulling the Micah, shaking the table here.
Yeah, it was really good.
Sorry, it's I get all excited here.
There's not an earthquake at Mahaffey. No, but
Or no. But you have the opportunity to have an encounter with the living God in a way that is unique. It's not that it can't happen anywhere else. I hope it's happening everywhere else.
Right, exactly.
But there's something unique about coming to a camp,
it's set
wherever
apart.
that camp is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And you come across those of us who I may have been guilty of it at times that are really kind of crazy about church camp. They're really passionate about it.
Yeah.
Really,
yeah.
Usually that's because they've had an experience at camp.
Yeah.
And Rich is exactly right. If we slow down wherever we are, God wants to meet you for those moments. Like he's not waiting for this 1 week out of the year to come here. But I think that God is in the ministry of camps where you slow down enough, But yeah, you run into those people who are just like camp. It's like they've felt the Lord there and they're passionate about it, and I'm sure I've been there too. But so Rich,
Yes.
subject number 2. Rich, I want to talk to you a little bit about global missions. We talk to churches that are small, churches that are in rural places.
Yeah.
Where time's already kind of slowed down for them.
Oh, yeah.
They're
I've
out
pastored
there.
in some of those places.
Yes, you have. Yes. Your church, I'm going to give you an example, okay? You're an Alliance church. You've got 25 people regularly on a Sunday morning. 30 or 40 if it's a special holiday or something. You don't have a big budget, but you have a group of people that are passionate about global missions, want to be a part of that. What are ways that they can be involved beyond the just give to the Global Missions Fund, which is great and everybody should do.
Yep.
But I think that sometimes we feel like, we're just this little church. Like, we're just this small thing. Can we have a actual global impact? Like, is there a place for us? Maybe we're older. Maybe we're an older congregation. Maybe we're not going to necessarily go to another country on a trip. But what are some ways that churches in rural areas you guys think might be able to have, or small churches can have and be involved in the global mission of God?
Whew. How much time do we have?
Yeah, you have to do that in 25 words or less. No,
Oh, man. You're
Do you want a
killing
milkshake
me,
tonight?
Smalls.
no. Dive into it, Rich. Dive into it. We're doing okay.
Yeah. There's a lot that's running through my mind that I want to be able to say, but I also don't want to open up the floodgates.
Right.
And I also don't want to say, well, just go buy my book, or go buy this book, or go buy that book, because books are books. I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, can a church, a small church, a rural church, wherever? Yeah, absolutely, because you can't have an understanding of what the church is, biblically speaking, without also understanding what missions is. And you can't have a clear understanding of what missions is without having an understanding what the two are absolutely connected. And so we need to step back and realize that there's one mission that we've been given. It's God's mission. And there are 3 expressions of it. There's a local expression, a regional expression, a global expression. You can think of it as kind of an Acts 1:8 paradigm, where you have the local efforts, the evangelism among people that are like us in my community. You're Jerusalem, yeah. And that's what a lot of churches do. And they think, oh, see, we're engaged. Well, yes, you're engaged in doing evangelism. You're hopefully meeting people in your community. But then there's the regional expression. There's the Judea Samaria, if you will, which includes, on the one hand, the Judea piece, people who are like you, same culture, but not necessarily in your community, right? But the Samaria piece, or be people who aren't like you, who are in your global region, in your area, your county, your part of the state, wherever, but people from, often people from other nations. And let me just insert one thought here as I'm talking about that. We live in a time where there is a movement of peoples that's unprecedented. God has people on the move all over the world. And it's not just to the United States,
Right.
but we're talking U.S. churches. So I'm going to come back to this in a moment, but the nations, the peoples of the world are coming to us, which changes everything.
Right.
Then there's the global expression, what we usually think of with missions. And when it comes to missions, you've either been sent or you're a sender. Both are equally valid. Both are equally, they need each other.
Right.
If God hasn't sent you to another culture or another place in the world to work with another people, that means you're in ascending role. So what does that look like? I'm glad
Right.
you asked.
Yes. Tell us.
Tell us. Pray.
Prayer.
Give. Send. But that praying and giving is part of being a good sender.
Right.
Go, or be willing to go, or at least go short term. And welcome.
Right.
Okay, so how can a church of any size? I don't care how big or small your church is.
Anyone
this is
can do
true.
this. Yeah.
Regardless, it doesn't matter what ethnic background you are. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic background is. Doesn't matter what age you are. If you haven't been sent, then you're a sender. Are you giving to missions? Yes, hopefully. Are you praying for missions and the work of missionary? Yeah, and a lot of times that's kind of where it stops, right?
Right.
How do we do this? And in the Alliance Church, hopefully, we do at least a missions conference every year.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to suggest to you that missions isn't one more ministry program that we do. It's not a list of things. Missions and engaging in the mission is part of everything that we do.
Yeah.
Missions is a lifestyle.
Right.
So praying and giving and doing other sending kinds of things, that should be going on all the time.
Because we're all called globally, right?
Yeah, we're all called. We may not all be missionaries, and we're not,
Right.
but we all have a role to play in the mission of
A
God.
role to play in the mission.
Yeah, so you've either been sent or you are sending. If you are a sender, you got to be praying and giving, but so much more. There's how do you, again, no matter what size the church is, how do you keep missions awareness and education going throughout the year?
Right.
Are you doing, for example, a moment for missions at least once a month as part of your worship service?
Right.
If you still print bulletins out for your worship service, is there like a missionary of the week or an international worker of the week that's identified that you're praying for that week? Again, even if you're a small church, historically, have you ever sent a missionary? Are they still alive? Are you connected with them? If you haven't, has there been an international worker that's come through and spoken at your church that you've really connected with? Are you partnering with them in ministry? Are you partnering together with other small churches?
Right.
Because why can't we work
Well,
together?
that's a good point. You
Yeah.
know, especially if there's something you want to do, and maybe you do want to be a part of something that's a little bit bigger than what your nucleus is capable of. Why not get together with? I mean, usually if you can throw a rock and hit one Alliance church, it'll bounce off and hit another one.
And in Western Pennsylvania, holy cow!
That's
you
true,
know,
right?
it's,
So-
Bing, bing, bing.
yeah.
So get together, combine resources, combine prayer,
Absolutely.
conversations,
Yeah.
have speakers in, and give them more than one place to go and speak that weekend. You know?
Yeah, and there's where I think the larger churches and the medium-sized churches can really come alongside and help the smaller churches in this respect. Not just with missions, but a lot of different things. And there are some churches who have that vision to, hey, we know, we've got our own resource. I mean, when you look at the ratios, big churches have the same problems small churches.
Right, yeah.
We still need volunteers.
Yeah.
We still need money. We still need,
Right.
so,
Yeah.
there's all those things, but we can help each other out. In small churches, especially, the sooner we realize that we're better together on these things, or as we've heard repeatedly from so many people, but I think it was Martin Luther King who first said something effective: teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah.
Right? If the dream is to take the gospel to the ends of the earth,
Right.
and by going back to the Acts 1:8 paradigm for just a second, it's not a local, and then we'll get to the regional, and then we'll get to the ends of the earth. It's a local and regional and global. It's all three together. It's not one over the other. It's all of them. And some churches do a really good job with overseas because we're alliance churches after all, right?
Right.
Just picking on our denominational family.
Yeah. We're allowed.
We're mission. That's our middle name, and we have a lot of pride in that, and rightly so. But then we ignore the people right across the street.
Yep.
But then you have a lot of other churches that are all about the people across the street, and it's like, there's other people in the world. That's someone else's job.
Right.
And
right.
I think on that comes back to where establishing relationships with certain missionaries can really help
Absolutely.
you. Because what I have observed in my own church, where we have a couple of core missionary teams, and that's not to say that we don't invite other missionaries in to speak when they're on home assignment in Western PA.
But you make sure they're there.
We have our people, in different areas around the globe.
Yeah.
And many of those people, when they come back and when they share, because they're sharing about personal evangelism, about being good neighbors, those things can then be applied to our own community.
Yeah.
And I think it's so crucial for each church, even if they are in like the CMA.
Yeah.
And for one thing, it's going to make it a lot easier to put your missions conference that you're supposed to do together if you have those relationships built up. But to have those couple those couple teams, then each church can gauge based on their size, their financial support, how many teams that's going to be. But in general, if a missionary is coming home for furlough about every other year, if you have, say, 4 missionaries, that means you probably got 2 of them on home assignment each year, and you can have two missionaries come in and speak in your church talking about what they're doing, because and also as our culture becomes less positive towards Christianity, these missionaries who are witnessing in many of our missionaries, they're witnessing in these what we like to call in the CMA the creative access countries. There's one missionary that we partner with that we just love. I can't say their names because they work a lot with a group of people that makes them creative access. But having that relationship established and maintaining that over years is huge compared to whenever I filled a pulpit and I went into the church and I saw some prayer cards on the back for some missionaries, and I thought, dude, those missionaries look familiar, but it took me a minute to think, oh, that prayer card's about 10 years old. Their son is a teenager now.
Yeah, you need to update the prayer cards there. When you have the relationship, and that's what's going to get, especially the younger generations. It's more about like your generation and younger, even my kids' generation. My kids aren't much older than you, but or not much younger than you. They're a few years younger than you, but
I'm
still,
35.
Yeah.
He's younger than me.
So, but your generation and younger is more about those personal connections, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's a healthy thing, and so we have, all types of opportunities like that. And the other piece I mentioned earlier was welcome. I mean, you have, going back to the numbers of immigrants and refugees and international students that are part of even small town communities. For example, if you're anywhere near a college, you got international students.
Yes.
And even though refugees tend to initially settle in the big cities, like Pittsburgh, for example, as they get more settled and as they're able to find employment, they start heading out.
Dispersing.
I mean, we have, for example, Cranberry Township in Butler County, the very southernmost part of Butler County, north of Pittsburgh, and it is just teeming with refugees and immigrants now. It's just exploding in growth, and so that goes back to, are you a welcoming church? Again, it doesn't matter what size, but are you a welcoming church?
Really good friends of ours are Syrian refugees in Cranberry, and and it was Alliance people that they're connected with here. They've gotten connected with them since coming over as refugees. One thing I really appreciated that you said, Rich, was realizing the missional impact we have to have locally. You know, we're good at the overseas mission, but the local mission too. And I think probably the big prayer for our district moving forward is that the lines between domestic pastor and missionary just get more and more blurry. I think, you know, the less of a difference you can tell between the missionary and the pastor is because that's the world we're living in. We're living in, we're living in an environment now where we need to be missionaries here. And do the same kind of things and immerse into the culture and get to know
I'm hesitant to say we need to be missionaries, but the sentiment is spot on. We need to approach ministry as if we were missionaries.
We need to live like missionaries.
We need to live in a way to understand the culture. I mean, have you become aware of all the Gen Z lingo that's out there and Gen Alpha lingo?
Are you Sigma?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're sus, man. You know, it's
sus.
This is so cringe right now.
Yeah.
No,
Sorry, cringe is out now, I think. But so you know, are we? And who knows? Every generation comes up with its words. So who knows how much tread that tire's going to have? But you know, those types of a thing. You know, no matter who you're reaching, you got to get to know who they are and how they're living and understand basic worldview stuff. And when you start talking about doing evangelism with people in our culture, what's becoming more and more prominent, and I started doing, engaging in evangelistic conversations with a lot of people now, is raising the question, not starting with, if you were to die tonight, where would you go? But have you ever heard of Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then you kind of go from there. Or, you know, and if the answer is yes, it's like, well, what can you tell me? What do you know about Jesus? And see where the conversation goes. But other times, it's like, no, I don't know. Do you mean that Puerto Rican baseball player, Jesus? I mean, seriously. I mean, we joke about it, but it's kind of like that's the only time they ever see the word or hear the name, or it's in the context of, swearing at somebody. And it's kind of like, so we have reached that point in our culture, like it or not. I mean, that's just the reality. We're a post-Christian culture now.
Right, we really are.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the idea of living like a missionary. We heard missionary speakers this week where they evangelize out of long-term relationships that they work very, very hard to create. And they hang on every single shred of how much deeper they're able to get into someone's life. And Americans are really no different. I mean, they are going to require relationship. They're going to require, as a book we just read, incarnation. Incarnation. We just read Tangible Kingdom.
Yep.
And I have been thinking about that a lot. So I think the lines between, missionary and pastor probably going to need to get blurrier and blurrier, because we're increasingly becoming a post-Christian, unchurched, people are sending their missionaries to us, That's what's happening. I was working with a denomination that needed help hiring a pastor.
Yeah.
And they ended up hiring a pastor that came here from India.
Nice.
And just one of the best pastors they've ever had. I mean, he's doing an incredible job, but he said, I wanted to bring the gospel to America. Yeah. So who could imagine saying
that? To be fair, we're not dead yet. Yeah, he's completely valid, but we're not dead yet.
Yeah, but a couple of us still kicking here.
We've got to adapt. We've got to make some changes.
We've got to change.
And understand that, when you look at what's going on in the whole world missions-wise, the theological and missiological center has shifted. It's no longer based out of the West.
Right.
It's moved south. It's moved to Latin America and Africa and parts of Asia.
Yeah, they're growing like...
Yeah. Now,
like
there's still a need for missionaries in these places, to some of these places, to help in terms of regular missions, to help continue to equip them as they grow. But then you have, the unreached and limited access places that, that's where, people just don't have the access to the gospel. And we're not out of that yet, but we're not the powerhouse anymore either. And in fact, the term that's kind of being thrown around more and more now is polycentric. We're not so much centralized in one geographical location anymore. It's not the West, it's not the East, it's polycentric. We're kind of all over. And this relationship stuff, that's always been the case.
Yeah.
And even if you use different evangelism tools, they're best used within the context of a relationship. And when you're in a relationship, you can be free to be yourself and be awkward and all these other things because your friends are going to listen.
Right.
And have these conversations.
Right. I have a number of friends that are unsaved, that have known me for years and years and years and years, and it's like I'm their pastor. To them, I'm the only reference that they have, but they know that I'm a Christian. We've been buddies for a long time. I'll get calls when they're getting married. I'll get calls when a grandparent passes away.
Yeah.
Because they, it's at those big intersections of life that they feel like they need some type of
the key moments.
Right.
Yep.
And that comes just, none of that was intentional. That was all, these were my buddies. These were my friends. And that's just how it worked. I didn't necessarily as a kid wake up one day and think, I'm going to create this long-term relationship so that I can have, now I think that way a little bit more, but as a kid you don't necessarily.
Well, no, and I looking back, I was at my 10 or 15 year high school reunion, so this goes back a little ways.
Yeah.
And one of my buddies, that close friends in high school, kind of lost touch, but it was one I'd have these conversations with, would pray for him, all these things, and we're at the reunion. He came over, we were talking, and I don't know how we got on it, but he pretty much said, "Oh yeah, I'm a Christian now." My mouth just dropped because he used to be into some other things, religious, spiritually speaking. I'm like, "Tell me more."
Yeah.
He said, and he brought in another classmate. He said, "Yeah, I started talking to Lisa, and she had become a Christian." I'm like, "What?" So I'm like, "This is great." So I'm like, after I got over the goosebump moment, right? It's like, I'm like, "Kev, you don't know what this means to me. You remember these conversations we used to get into once in a while?" "Oh yeah." I said, "Yeah, but here's what you don't know is I prayed for you all these years, and I had no idea." So here's the thing. Don't give up on people.
Never give up.
You never give up. You never know. And go to your class reunions because you just never know.
There's a guy, and I know you're going to be watching this podcast.
You right there.
He will be because he watches them faithfully, and he likes everyone. We went to high school together, and I saw him recently post he's becoming a pastor. He's in a camp ministry. He does. He goes to state parks and holds the Sunday service in the mornings there. And
good job.
Yeah, and I mean I can take zero credit for that because I probably, if anything, set a horrible example for him in school. So he's where he is in spite of me, not because of me. But we have a really great relationship now. Yeah. But and I'll tell you what, there's at least 2 from my high school people that became pastors, that are pastors now, that didn't have any interest in school when we were in school, didn't have any interest in it. So you just all of those little touch points growing up, all
you just
matter.
never know.
Yeah,
you don't know how much people are listening.
Yes.
And so they come to you and they're like, I mean, I still get together with people I went to high school with, and I'm not close with any of my high school friends, but still get together with some that live near where I do, and we'll get into these conversations even now, and they all know I'm a pastor. They all know where I'm coming from. Even back in high school, they're like, "You're different," and I would tell them why, and I said, "But in a good way. You're different in a good way. I really admire that." And I'm like, "Well, thanks," as they're smoking a joint in front of me, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But one other thing I want to interject in here that I think is very critical, whether we're talking about evangelism and evangelistic outreach or we're talking about missions engagement.
Yeah.
The role of the pastor.
Yeah.
If if the lead pastor especially, but not exclusively the lead, but the lead pastor, if it's a multi-staff, or the pastor of the church and the other church leaders, particularly the elders, if the pastor is not on board, it may happen, but not like it should.
Right.
So when we talk about how do I get my church engaged with missions, again, I'm going to keep saying it. I don't care what size your church is, but even in the small church, if the pastor is struggling, I mean, we have pastors, even in the Alliance, missions isn't even on their radar screen.
Right. It's got to come from the top.
Yeah,
You know,
it's got the pastors. Pastors need to lead.
Yeah, right. I totally agree. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And that's there's actually I'm working on a follow-up book.
Okay.
That takes one of the chapters out of the first book to explore this very thing, because that's one of my things I'm very committed to doing is getting pastors on board. So pastor, get on board.
He's coming.
Put us down. We want to. We'll do review blurbs for you.
There you go.
Yeah, we can get into that.
I'm still waiting for the first one for our mission together. I'm just saying.
I did read it. We should do that. That would be a good podcast.
There you go.
So, well, we're going to leave it there. Matthew's about
Beautiful.
to turn into a pumpkin. He's on
Kitchen patrol tonight.
kitchen patrol. So he keeps us fed all week.
Thank you for your work.
Yeah, and I do want to thank all of our workers here at camp this week.
Yes, thank you.
I've been a camper for the last 35 years, not a worker. That are two very different things. Camp is a lot of work for the pastors and their families here, and boy, it's so appreciated, and I don't think that they get to hear it enough. So if you're at Mahaffey or around Mahaffey and you're working this week and you happen to catch the podcast, thank you, and thank you, Matt. Even though it's your first year, we'll still thank you. You deserve it. So thank you, Rich, for joining us.
You're welcome.
For
Thanks for having me on here.
Yeah, thanks for risking life and limb and
I'm not the one teetering on the edge of a small cliff here.
I'm gonna come down off my cliff now, but thank you guys for joining us. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks.